So good afternoon, and thank y'all for joining us today. We're honored to partner with UPCEA on this research that we're going to be sharing with you today on SEO perspectives, capabilities, and success within professional continuing and online education departments. And the insights from the research were both informative as well as truly instructive. And the most compelling takeaway for us is that search engine optimization is an under-leveraged resource to drive enrollment. And so we're glad that you're here today to learn about this firsthand so that you can begin having conversations around strategic search engine optimization within your school and perhaps be ready to take some action either immediately or at the beginning of your next fiscal year. I'm Paula French, Director of Sales and Marketing at Search Influence, and I've been working in SEO and digital marketing for 13 lucky years here at Search Influence. We are a woman-owned marketing agency focused on search engine optimization and paid digital advertising. That's really our focus because we believe that those channels are going to have the greatest impact on your marketing success. And I work alongside Will Scott, our CEO and co-founder, as well as 25 more individuals to help our clients optimize their potential. So with that, I'll turn it to Will to introduce himself.
So I'm Will Scott. I'm the CEO of Search Influence. We've been Search Influence for more than 17 years. I've been working online since the middle 90s. I sort of famously talk about having put my first website online in 1994, when it was really just me and Al Gore on the internet, and everybody else was trying to catch up. But in that time, I've put literally millions of pages on the web. For thousands of businesses, and have been sort of actively abusing Google since it came onto the market in around 2002. So I lead our team at Search Influence, most particularly in the area of SEO, and it is something that I'm super passionate about. Jim?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jim Fong. I'm the Chief Research Officer at UPCEA, and I basically look at a lot of the trends out there, regardless of their industry trends, marketing trends, demographic trends, and whatsoever. And I led a marketing team at Penn State back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and it was a very highly creative, very talented group here. But the writing was on the wall, and we needed to basically turn our creative group into a digital group. And so we brought in a lot of different staff members, and we just couldn't throw pages up there. In fact, I remember walking into the office of one of our web designers, and on the shelf, which was not a good look, it was how to build websites for dummies. And it's just like, ugh. But anyway, so years went on, and we sent probably about eight or nine of my marketing staff to Search Engine Optimization Bootcamp. And it was a great experience. It was a 2-day experience basically, and learned all I could learn, and really put the focus in on the strategy and the architecture as opposed to the creative elements, and then have watched it evolve. But my big thing today is really about that it's come full circle. It's probably even more important. We take it for granted, and there's a lot of different reasons why, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as my section comes up.
Wonderful, and I'll just say a brief hello as well. My name is Bruce Etter. I am the Senior Director of Research and Consulting with UPCEA. I was kind of tasked with leading the research side with the UPCEA portion of this. So we've got a lot of interesting stuff, so I won't bore you with any more details, and instead I'll pass it back over to Paul to talk just a little bit more.
Thank you, Bruce. And so attending live today has an extra benefit besides getting this information firsthand. One attendee will be chosen to win an SEO roadmap created by our team at Search Influence for one of your program degrees or certificates. So whichever one you choose, we will go through and create essentially an SEO strategy for you to hand over for your team to execute. And so that's going to include a technical site review, keyword recommendations, content topics, and link building opportunities. So really four key factors that go into strategic SEO. We're going to hand that over in a roadmap. So in our agenda today, we are going to be covering first a definition of SEO by Will to level set on our knowledge there. Then Bruce is going to review the current higher education landscape and how SEO kind of fits into that. Then Bruce is going to walk us through some a high-level overview of the research findings. And then finally, I'm going to go through a set of tactics to help you actually do something about it and help you elevate your SEO performance. So hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A at the end, but please do submit your questions in the chat as we go. It could be in the Q&A section or the chat. Either one, we'll be paying attention to those. If we can, we'll stop throughout to answer them, but if not, we will get to them hopefully at the end. Any questions that do go unanswered, we'll include in our follow-up email. And with that, I hand it over to you, Will. Will, we can't hear you.
You all missed the funniest thing that I was going to say today.
There you go.
So what I was saying is that as a person of a certain age who may in fact be a parent, you can imagine the sorts of jokes I tell. And so one of the things that I say from time to time is that I've been doing SEO since before most people could spell it. So there's a bit of a misunderstanding about what SEO is. As the survey responses show, everybody knows SEO is important. The problem isn't with the schools and the units who know they're not doing it. The real problem is those who think they're doing it. At the recent national conference, I heard references to SEO content, SEO focus, SEO blogs, SEO blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying those folks aren't doing great program and school-focused content. I'm just saying it's not SEO. And just real quick, anybody who's actually seen the movie that this image is a reference to, do me a favor and throw a 1 into the chat, if you don't mind. So what is SEO really? It's pretty simple. And I'm a big fan of the phrase simple, not easy, right? Because there's a lot of things that we know how to do, that we know the tools and the sort of tactics for, but that we don't execute on. You know, for me, one of them is like, how do I lose that last 5 pounds? But SEO is one of those things. At its core, it's really simple. It's demonstrating relevance with an abundance of searcher-focused content in a variety of media, and demonstrating authority by citations from other authoritative sources. And notice I said citations there because I know we're in an academic setting and I want people to have the right reference. Interestingly enough, one of the earliest algorithms that Google acquired was an algorithm called the Hilltop algorithm, which looked at links as citations in academic papers. So the way I like to think about this is keywords, content, and links, lather and repeat until you've won. That's SEO.
I'm muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jim's going to talk. I'm muting.
Okay, so is it on me, Will, now? Okay, well, actually, thank you, Will. And I want to talk a little bit about the higher education landscape and why SEO matters. And as I was mentioning that in my story at Penn State, you know, there was a lot of assumptions out there. There were a lot of beliefs, and it wasn't really clean. And then over the past few decades, Bruce and I have reviewed a number of marketing websites, RFI forums, all sorts of different things. As part of the study that Bruce will talk about here is we did review approximately 100 websites, and we kind of audited them, and we looked for certain SEO elements. And I've been using these SEO elements since, you know, the turn of the century here, and interviewing people, interviewing leaders, talking to marketing leaders, I really think comes down to three types of personalities. It's the personality of the leader that says, oh, my website is pretty, it's beautiful, it makes me look good. The president of the university loves my website as well. It makes me look professional. But they don't really look at what's underneath that. They don't look at the copy, they don't look at the architecture, they don't look at the metacode and whatsoever, meta language. They don't look at the links and whatever, but it's just a pretty website. And I think higher education falls guilty of that pretty website. It's either a pretty website or it's a really gray, boring website that has too many masters on it, and it tries to meet everybody's needs out there. So that's the first persona, I think, of SEO. The other SEOs, we do SEO, and that's what Will's talked about. He's mentioned that, oh, we've done our keywords and our faculty generated our keywords, and this is what they gave us. And so therefore, we're going to use these keywords when we write copy. And these are the graphics that our faculty wants, or this is the fact that we think the market wants. But it's not really what the market. It's not really designed around the student. So, but they've applied some SEO elements to it, and they've called it "We've done SEO." Then the last one I think is is really where the science comes in. SEO is a science, and it's really about the matching the science and the creative element and the financial and the risk elements together. I look at SEO as, okay, we've got to look at all these certain principles that Will talked about. It's all about keywords, it's all about content, it's all about links, it's all about how things are set up so the browsers can read things correctly or whatsoever. But everything is coordinated well enough, and it also ties in with your paid search, your paid strategies. All these things, it's all trading off, and there's a lot of risk involved, and there's a lot of trade-offs that happen, so which makes it a financial decision. So I look at SEO as being really a science, financial, creative type of venture there that folks have got to look at. They just can't say we've done our keywords and be done with it. So I think that's where I reflect upon the SEO a little differently or more expansively with the higher education audience. With that being said, I just want to drop into the higher education audience a little bit more and just say that we've got to evolve, and SEO is even more important today. I could just say, it's a website, it's fine, things will get done, but we got too much competition out there. We've got crazy stuff that's happening in the marketplace. I tell Bruce this story here, but I found an electric skateboard in the dumpster not too far away from my house. I got on it yesterday, and I was just cruising around. Okay, I'm 57 years old. I've got to evolve with the times here, but it's fun stuff. But anyway, I had my first CBD infused mead a few months ago as well. There's a lot of things that are happening. I'm a big fan of plant-based meats as well. All of these things are happening. Self-driving cars are happening. Our product line is shifting immensely. And as a result, higher education's product line is shifting. And we'll talk about that real briefly. But as we evolve, it's getting harder and harder to find things. We don't know exactly what the target market wants with education. We've got to figure that out. We don't know exactly what employers need and want. We have to figure that out. We've got to develop tools thing. It isn't very, we know where to buy candy and gum at the store or online. Our product continues to evolve, and our economies continue to evolve, that it's very hard to find things. We have to maximize our opportunities. That's why SEO is even more important today. And it's more cluttered. We have 1 trillion times more web pages out there than what I was doing 20 years ago. So these factors make the science even more and more important. So next slide here, Bruce. Well, it's all about supply and demand. And, from a demand sense here, we have to know what the customer needs. I question whether or not we know what the customer needs. We assume that the customer needs a 120 credit undergraduate degree and a 36 credit or a 30 credit graduate degree. But I think we're learning more about what the customer needs, and we have to give them what they want, and we have to package things differently. We'll talk about that. The supply side, what's possible? What can we deliver? Well, we've got a lot of challenges happening in our fields of higher education. Can we actually design stackable credentials, for example, alternative credentials, digital badges? Can we make it happen? Or is our political structures in our student information systems, our registration systems, our comprehensive learner records, are all these things keeping us from evolving where the market is? If we don't do this, then others will fill the gap within the marketplace, I feel. And we'll see that in other ways here. Next slide, please. So I just want to say that we have got to get better. And I'm going to reflect real briefly that 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we could put up these 36 credit or 30 credit graduate degrees, and they're okay, they're mediocre, they're very text heavy, bulletin board type of courses, very little video. We could put those things up there 10 or 15 years ago with mediocre marketing and mediocre to bad websites and at high prices, and we'd grow enrollments because we were in a growth market. We are not in a growth market anymore. Undergraduate enrollments, we know, are trending downward. The latest statistics from National Student Clearinghouse show that we only have 15.1 million undergraduate enrollments right now from a high of 18.1. We've lost 3 million students in terms of year-to-year enrollments. That's not including other numbers of some college no degree that are sitting on the sidelines here. A new report also came out from Encora EduVentures that shows that graduate enrollments either are flattening out or declining now. So even those that are banking on that, we have a very tight market in front. In fact, we have more supply that's coming into the market. We have more online classes and online degrees that are coming into the market. So that too is playing into the mix here. Next slide. Another piece here is that high school graduation rates are great. They look wonderful, positive trending, a lot of good things happening here. Some people will say, well, you got great inflation, but that's another issue here. But in general, almost 9 out of 10 folks that go through high school graduate. And whether or not, the issue here is that even though the graduation rates were increasing over the last decade here, why were we seeing a decline in undergraduate enrollments? Well, we have issues around tuition, and we have issues around the value of education. We also have an economy that's transforming. There's a survey out there, I think it's Pew or one of the big research firms, that says that, okay, the value of a college degree may be on the decline. And so students that are going through college are not necessarily believing that college, is going to guarantee them, great incomes and job security. There's a little bit of a question mark in terms of some of that. So we've got some problems coming forward. The next problem is also the number of students. This is a distribution of age in terms of the U.S. here, and we've got a much smaller kind of cohort of 12-year-olds and younger coming through our population. That's going to drive the number of college students, traditional undergraduate college students, down. We are going to lose yet another million more potentially over the next 10 years annually. And so we're at a situation right now, and we're seeing more and more colleges either merge together or announce they're closing their doors. In fact, a month doesn't go by lately where a college hasn't announced a merger or that they're shutting down. So anyway, so the outlook here, and a lot of it is based on boomer wealth and whether that wealth is being distributed in our economy. We've got a problem here regarding that number. We like to have at least 18 million people in our higher education system to make it work. Otherwise, things are going to contract. And now we have a situation over the next 10 to 15 years where the demographic cliff is going to be a problem for higher education. Next slide. So one of the things I talked about in that supply-demand diagram earlier was that we have to know what the student wants. The student doesn't necessarily want 120 credit degree there. They don't want to jump in and basically have $100,000 of debt when they graduate, and not knowing that they have a guaranteed job once they do graduate, because the economy is changing. So one of the things that they can mitigate risk on, or we can help them mitigate risk on, is by making it stackable, by recognizing things that they've learned that they would have learned in the class anyway. So there's alternative credentials, stackable credentials, non-credit to credit pathways. There's a lot of things that if we get our product right, we can maximize our potential and our return on students as well to mitigate that declining demographic cliff that's actually happening. Next slide, please. So, one of the things, if we don't do it, I feel like if higher education doesn't do it, the private sector will do it. And that's where, you see a chart where MOOC growth is happening. MOOC is a totally different market. It's a potentially replacement market or a supplemental market for what we do in higher education, but there's also a growth of micro-master's degrees that are happening here. The product is transforming, and we need to transform with it. I'm a big believer that we can reverse the effect of the demographic cliff, but it's going to require us to build pathways and to build a more flexible, stackable credential that feeds into a degree. And if we do this correctly, that demographic cliff is going to be less of an issue, because we're going to get students to jump back in. We have 39 million some college no degree students sitting on the sideline. We get them to jump back in. Then we get people that are willing to stay in the system because we recognize that they had military experience that results in leadership credits. We recognize the fact that they went through a boot camp regarding coding, and we can recognize 3 credits there. All of these things can help reverse the demographic cliff, but we have to maximize our product but we also have to maximize our exposure. And when we get them in the top of the funnel, when we start communicating with them, then we need to convert them through an enrollment management cycle. And when they get at the top of the funnel, and assuming they get there, that's where SEO plays a big role. We have to make sure that we do everything that we can to keep their attention, to appeal to their interests, and to get them to stay and consider our product. Next slide, Bruce. So there's also a different element here regarding the business decision maker. They're also going to play a big role in the future. This Inside Track study shows that promotion decisions and hiring decisions are major factors here. And the next slide will also show that Collegius, a study that we did with them, shows that the alternative credentials are going to be a big factor moving forward. Higher education wants to be at the table. Both studies showed that employers want to be at the higher education table. Employers expect to influence the curriculum. They can't be, in a silo with higher education. They want some involvement here, but they also want to build a model that's better for their employees and students here. And that's one that's stackable, and that's one that rewards prior learning and other factors like that. So we have to get the product and the marketing correct. So let me pass the ball over to you, Bruce, regarding you can actually speak to that interface now. Assuming we get the product right, we'll get the marketing right, and we'll engage them better.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jim, and hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the research that we did with search influence, and there's only a handful of it that we can actually get to, right? We've got a limited amount of time today. I strongly encourage you to download the report that is included in this deck. I'm probably going to say that 2 or 3 more times, but again, this is just a fraction of what we can get into today. So with that being said, I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, as more information of each of these studies can be seen, as well as their unique methodologies in that comprehensive report. But I do just want to touch on sample sizes and timelines for each of the studies. So you can see them here. For the Marketing Leaders study, we had 68 participants, and that took place from September to November in 2022. Our Institutional Leaders survey followed a similar timeline with 70 participants and taking place in early November. And then lastly, while these surveys were going on, we also performed our SEO audit on 100 randomly selected member institutions, and that was between October 6th and November 22nd, November 2022. So looking at our first study here, the Institutional Leaders study, to set the context, I think it's important to understand who these people are, right? The demographics. So the majority, nearly 2/3, were directors or executive directors or deans. Approximately half of these folks come from a public research institution, while another 20% came from master's comprehensive institutions. And then lastly, looking at the size here, nearly half come from large institutions, which we defined as those with more than 15,000 undergraduate or graduate students. So in general, one of the key findings here was that institutional leaders are not all that satisfied with their PCO unit's web strategy, of which SEO is a major portion, right? As can be seen on the figure at the top of the slide, a greater number of institutional leaders disagree or strongly disagree, so that's a combined percentage there of 40%, then agree or strongly agree, 38%, that their PCO unit has an established and well-defined web strategy to attract the modern learner, right? And this is a crux issue. This is a known issue, and all of the research that we put out and a lot of the other things that we've seen just underscores the importance of the digital footprint for an institution, right? And so this is a linchpin or a building block for a lot of that. And furthermore, only 27% agree or strongly agree that they're satisfied with their unit's web strategy, compared to 54% that disagree or strongly disagree. Now, there could be a lot of reasons as to why there's kind of this chasm of agreement there, but the lack of satisfaction with PCO unit's web strategy may be in large part due to the information or lack thereof that leaders receive. So although 62% of institutional leaders agree on the importance of regularly receiving SEO-related metrics to inform their strategy, half of unit leadership disagrees that they regularly receive those updates, right? So this infrequent reporting between what they want and what they get could very possibly lead to improperly resourcing SEO. That could be from a staffing perspective, a financial perspective, or a lot of different views there. But as a result, SEO and the related web strategy efforts suffer, right? And so I think seeing this awareness on the front end is really one of the key and really lower lifts that we can do to start to improve things. So that was just one slide from institutional leaders. Again, loads more in the report. Strongly recommend downloading that. Diving into the marketing leaders, I think, again, it's important to understand who these folks are. So approximately half, 51%, are senior directors or directors of marketing and communications. And then we see with institution type and size, it's very similar to that of the institutional leader study. Over half come from public research, and again, over half are from the larger institutions. So again, I'm gonna keep beating this drum. I really encourage you to read the report. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But one of the more interesting series of questions to me relates to the metrics that are tracked for PCO programs. So as can be seen in this chart here, there are essentially kind of three tiers, as I see it, related to these metrics. So this first tier are the metrics that the overwhelming majority of units seem to cover. These are kind of the more basic ones that include web traffic, source of traffic, and organic visits. These are the staples, right? These are the ones that every institution understands how to track and measure, and it provides the baseline knowledge, if you will. The next group here is tier 2, and the second tier of metrics, it becomes more granular, yet they're still captured by over half of all marketing units. What's interesting to me about this group of metrics is that they paint a more comprehensive picture of individuals' digital experiences and impressions with PCO programs, right? Particularly looking at things like time spent on pages, mobile versus desktop, where are they coming from? And these metrics are really important to help us understand our audience and who they are and what they're doing. Yet we're seeing this drop off where at least 30% of institutions are missing these metrics. This third and final tier of metrics are captured by half of institutions or less. And some of these metrics, such as the cost per inquiry and the cost per enrollment, require greater tracking of the enrollment funnel, which clearly appears to produce challenges for a lot of institutions. However, the kind of cost per metrics are vital to understanding and creating efficient marketing capabilities. And we also asked, so of those units that cost per inquiry or track cost per inquiry and cost per enrolled student, the sample size was quite small, but the majority responded that these costs, of course, vary by program. And so even then, I think it's another important thing to take into account when we're thinking about how we're approaching this. So we talked a little earlier about how institutional leaders feel about metric reporting, but we also wanted to ask marketing leaders how they felt. So when we asked how often are you reporting these metrics, a third said once a month, while another quarter, 24%, said once a quarter. So we've got a fair number, around half, a little over, that are reporting relatively frequently. On the other side of that coin, 24% of institutions report on these metrics once every 6 months, or even more infrequently, to once a year, 10%, or even never, 6%. And metric reporting on a more frequent basis can allow institutions to have a greater sense of the effectiveness of their digital efforts, right? Particularly as it relates to SEO. And this more frequent reporting also allows folks to adjust course accordingly, right? If something we thought would work didn't work, we can change it in a month rather than waiting a year. And frequent reporting can also raise awareness with institutional stakeholders on the impacts of SEO outcomes. And the majority of teams here are reporting these via spreadsheets, and I think nearly 2/3 are doing it through dashboards. And I think this is an interesting finding. I'm not sure exactly what to make of it. To me, dashboards seem a lot more dynamic and interactive and intuitive, versus spreadsheets, you tend to need to be a little bit more in the weeds with the data. So arguably one of the biggest takeaways, if not the biggest takeaway for me from this research, was the disconnect between SEO as a core part of marketing strategy and having established SEO plans or strategies. Right, so we can see here in this box that's highlighted, 84% of PCO marketers see SEO as a core part of their marketing strategy, 84%. However, over half, 51%, said that the unit does not have an established SEO plan or strategy. Right, so there's a clear disconnect between knowing what we want to do and knowing and developing a plan to do it, right? So lastly on this slide, among units that have an established SEO plan or strategy, so again, remember that little less than half, 49%, 82% of marketing leaders are extremely or very aware of their capabilities SEO capabilities, processes, and strategies. However, the majority of marketing leaders recognize that there is room for improvement within the SEO capabilities of their PCO unit. We can see this with an average rating of 3.5 out of 5 when we ask them, how would you rate those capabilities? And to better understand those SEO capabilities for ourselves, we developed an SEO assessment or audit. So the assessment looked at 100 of our member institutions at random and assessed the SEO capabilities of their PCO units. To perform this, we wanted to do a quantitative analysis. And so we teamed up with Search Influence to develop a scorecard out of 100 points. And to develop this scorecard, we looked at 8 individual metrics and computed scores on a 10-point scale. We then multiplied each variable by 1.25 to produce our overall score out of 100. In the interest of time, I won't go over every variable or its definition. Again, you can learn a lot more about that in the report. But the main purpose of this slide is really to underscore that while there might be one or two things that we're doing decently or even okay, we struggle with the majority of metrics. And this is really reinforced by this slide here. So overall, the average score of our SEO audit was a 58.6 with a median of 59.6. So collectively, we are not excelling in the SEO realm. To put it into a better perspective, or a very understandable perspective, only 19 institutions out of our 100 received a grade of C or higher, right? A C. As we saw earlier in this deck, marketing leaders see SEO as a critical function of their marketing strategy, yet often lack that strategy around SEO. We also saw that institutional leaders have a desire to have more frequent reporting of those SEO metrics than they currently receive, which we also noted could result in SEO efforts receiving less visibility and therefore resources. And I think this series of misalignments are really reflected in the results of this SEO audit, right? SEO isn't something that we can just kind of kick the can down the road on. It's going to become increasingly important, particularly as the supply in programs increases and the number of potential students remains the same, or in a lot of cases even decreases. So we've got more supply, less demand, and it's going to be hyper competitive. And so with this in mind, I want to pass it over to Paula to talk a little bit more about how to elevate SEO performance and some things that you can do at your institution to address them.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, so for this section, I've got 2 things that I'm going to cover. First, we're going to review the most common tactics that we've identified as opportunities through both the research as well as our experience working directly with universities. And then we're going to go over one slide about what a good SEO strategy would include. So jumping into those most common tactical opportunities that we identified, so I have examples of these on the next 5 slides I'm going to show, so I'm not going to explain them in too much detail on this slide. So the first is writing optimized content per program or degree or certificate page. Second is creating unique optimized title tags and meta descriptions with natural insertion of keywords. The third is building links directly to deep pages on your website, including those degree, program, and certificate pages specifically. The fourth is leveraging web accessibility widgets like Accessibility to improve accessibility of websites for those with disabilities. And then the fifth is to fix technical issues. So to go into the examples, so first example here is writing optimized content per offering page. And so here we have an example of, this is, would normally be like stacked, but for screenshots, have them next to each other. This is a recently optimized page of one of our clients for their online bachelor's degree in human resources. And so you can see all of the places that I have highlighted with green boxes around them are either the keyword itself or similar variations that we've worked into the headings at all different levels. So you've got it in the H1s, the H2s, and the H3s, because those are really important tags on the page that Google's going to look to understand that content. And then we have it, you'll see it underlined in the actual content itself in a couple of places. And then included on that page is not just information about our degree, but also things that are related and really relevant and authoritative. So we talk about how our curriculum is aligned with SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resource Management, which is obviously very well regarded within the human resources world. And then it has a link out to SHRM related information, which is going to help with its relevance and authority. Then moving into the second thing here, we've got our optimized title tags and meta descriptions with that natural insertion of keywords. And so these two elements are very closely related to content. And usually when you're optimizing the content of a page, you're also optimizing the title tag and the meta description when you do that. But sometimes people look at them separately, and that is something you could do. Like you could go across your site and optimize all of your title tags and meta descriptions, but usually we're thinking about it on a program by program level. And so what's different about the content that we talked about on the page on the slide prior and the title tags and meta descriptions is that these can sometimes get forgotten because they're not what the user sees directly on the page when they're on your website, but they're seen when somebody finds your website via Google. So the screenshot at the top of the page is what your web page is going to look like when it actually ranks. And so the title tag is the most important tag on the page, and this is where you do really care about keywords. And then you have the meta description, which you do want to have the keywords in the meta description because you'll see Google is going to bold those, but your meta description, despite, popular belief perhaps, doesn't actually impact your ranking. So sticking keywords in your meta description isn't directly going to correlate with your Google ranking. But your meta description is kind of like an ad from the extent that when somebody sees it, that what they're reading there can help them click on your site. And therefore, when you do rank on Google, you'll get more clicks. And that is kind of like a trickle down effect ultimately to your rankings. But so talking about the title tag specifically, I've got a few different examples here because there's a few different scenarios that you might run into when you're thinking about the keywords people are actually searching when they would ultimately want to find your degrees and the degree names. So in the first sample, this is for an online course where the degree name really closely matches how prospects search. And so the wording here is, however, it's like specifically tuned to variations of the keyword human resources degree. So it's pretty straightforward. In sample 2, this page is about the general legal studies degree, but the paralegal certificate is part of that degree program, and people are actually searching for paralegal certificate. They might also be searching for legal studies degree. So in this case, we have this sort of like combination of BA in general legal studies and paralegal certificate so that we can capture people searching for both of those things. And then of course, this isn't the only place we're putting it. We're also optimizing it in the content, like on the prior slide. And then the third, and this is where things can get a little trickier. Let's say your degree name doesn't match at all the way that people are searching for this type of education or searching for, ultimately what they want to learn. You can leverage, parentheses or pipes to work in on essentially like an alternative name or descriptor, which ideally would be the keyword that people are searching about your degree. And so you can work that in there in a really natural way. We don't want to just stuff a bunch of keywords into our title tags or our content. We want to be very thoughtful about that and be very considerate about the words that you're choosing, because someone is going to see this on Google and we want it to actually mean something and be something that they want to click on. The third tactic that we really see as like a major opportunity is building links directly to deep pages. So a university subdomain is highly authoritative in Google's eyes from the get-go. But where we see individual schools or units fall down when it comes to their link building or their authority building is that there aren't enough deep links directly to the pages that you really want to rank, which are ultimately the degree pages. And so one of the ways you can do that is by leveraging your PR and media efforts, as well as your profiles, to get links directly to those specific pages, which is ultimately going to improve your ranking. I would say, I don't want to say pretty easily or pretty quickly, but it is a big impact there. So in this example here, we have a news article about the launch of 2 undergraduate degrees that links both to the homepage of the PCO unit, as well as directly to those degree pages. And they're linking on a pretty, rich set of keywords, which is ultimately the degree name. Then another place that you can build deep links are through profiles on sites like niche.com. And so this example here shows how there are links to both the overall degree and program page, kind of higher up, higher level on the profile, but then deeper in, there are links to these degree pages. So you very likely already have profiles that you're paying for, or you might already have for free just because there are different aggregator sites out there. And so it is a really good opportunity for you to go and fully optimize those profiles and leverage all of those features so that you can link directly to these pages and build out all of that content as well, because if your profile is better built out with those links, that's ultimately going to make those links more valuable because they'll be more relevant. Then the fourth is improving our web accessibility of your entire site. And so we care about accessibility, of course, because we want to make sure that your audience, when they come to your site, is able to read your information. But also there are a lot of factors with accessibility that cross over to SEO best practices. And so a straightforward way to address accessibility is by leveraging a tool like Accessibility, which has a widget that enables site masters to easily make their website fully compliant. And so it'll have essentially a little button in the bottom right corner where you can click this, and you'll see an example here where users can select to turn on a seizure safe profile or an ADHD friendly profile, or to leverage keyboard navigation or screen reader, or to increase the font size, or to change the contrast of the website. It really is a super neat tool that can help you be fully compliant really easily. Though you do sometimes have to make edits to your site to make accessibility fully work. I will give that a little bit of a disclaimer there. And then finally is fixing technical issues. And so this really can include a wide variety of things. So we use tools like SEMrush, which is a paid tool, or Google Search Console, which is a free tool from Google, to identify these issues. And so examples could be 404s or broken links, could be crawlability errors that's keeping Google from being able to access your full website, HTTPS, which is essentially having your whole site set up as a secure website. This could be your site speed, or even schema errors if schema is something that you've implemented on your site. So now that we've gone through some of this information at a tactical level, you don't want to run out and just start doing those tactics. You need to be strategic about it. And so if you think back to the research that Bruce presented, about 51% of units indicate that they do not actually have an SEO strategy. And so we really wanted to touch on what does a good SEO strategy look like. And so the first thing that you need to do is identify keywords for each offering. There are different keyword research tools that you can use to see what are people actually searching for. Something that is available in Google Search Console, that's one of our favorite tools to leverage, is the search queries report, because it will show you what you're already ranking for, and you can see if you're pretty low for those keywords, and then that will help you see, okay, people are actually searching for these things. These are the keywords that I should be improving for. But we usually use a combination of 2 to 3 tools to really figure out what those targeted keywords need to be for each of your programs, degrees, certificates. Next, you want to create a content plan for each. And so this could include your program content, could include course information, faculty, job growth, could include blog posts about career growth, and really so much more. Even videos, really thinking about that within your content plan is very important. And then next, your strategy should really include that plan to build those deep links like I was talking about before. So what sources do you have available to you? What profiles are you already paying for? Is the university paying for? What existing efforts like your PR or your PR team could you leverage? And then fourth, you really need to have a cadence for monitoring the technical site health. So all those errors I talked about in the last slide, that stuff, once you address the majority of the ones that are there today, they can continue to pop up as new pages are added to the site or as pages are removed from the site, and that will help you identify those things and proactively fix them before they become a larger issue. And then finally, as Bruce spoke to, we saw in the research how important reporting is to leaders. And so it's really ultimately up to marketing departments to figure out the ideal way to report to their stakeholders effectively, especially institutional leaders, especially people outside of their department who are making those budgeting decisions, so that they're aware of these efforts and can further support your SEO success to ultimately drive that enrollment. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim to facilitate Q&A.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions come across. It might be my view, but if folks have got questions, please do send them in the chat here, and we'll see what actually happens. In the meantime, let me actually kind of see if I can wrap things up a little bit as we wait for questions to populate. What Paula just kind of outlined is that there's a lot of guidelines, there's a lot of steps. It's basically a framework or an architecture that you have to think about, but it does not close off the fact that you've got to have a strategy for your websites. You've got to think about, okay, who my target audience is, what my strategy is, how am I going to differentiate myself, what's the business student component here. But all too often I see universities design websites for themselves, and because it's got the institutional look, it's got the logo and whatever, it looks nice, the dean feels good. It's got to be designed around the user, the customer. And once you identify who that is, then the other things like keywords and where you're linking to, and all these things factor into your strategy. So I think that it's a bigger picture there. And I think your creative actually flows from it as well. You know, how you're using images and videos and photos and whatever, that actually helps shape it. But you've got to keep all of these things that Paula said in mind first. And so it's basically a user design perspective, and you've got to step away from you designing it from yourself or giving too much responsibility over to your faculty, your staff, your designers. You've got to get more voice of the customer into it. And then with that said, once you pull all of these pieces into it, yes, they have input, then you can actually start tracking things to see whether or not that site is doing what it's supposed to be doing, what you want it to be doing, you know, what people are searching for to get there, what are those metrics there. And then you're going to have to tie in those metrics with other metrics as well. You have marketing metrics, you have, you know, where are they coming from, where are they going, how long they're staying, and how much are you spending, and is it resulting in applicants and students here. That's not all going to be tracked with an SEO kind of a tracking system there. So I think these are all things that help shape your whole web strategy, and how do you start working from there. It also helps address some of those things that Bruce brought up as well, is that there's a little bit of a chasm between leaders and marketing directors. I wrote a paper, I think in like 1998, about marketing directors and leaders, and that there's a disconnect there. I think having dashboards and metrics and regular engagement help kind of pull people together a little bit more, get people on the same page. And so I think these metrics are essential to implement marketing change, but also, you know, relational change and organizational change. Do we have any questions here? Because I can't really see anything here. It looks like Paula. Do you see anything?
We've got some now, Jim. While you were talking, a couple came through. So first question is, any concern with title tags and truncating on Google? So before I showed you, when I showed the title tag slides, those happen to be, some of them are shorter and some are a little bit longer. And they will, if they're beyond a certain pixel limit, not even a character limit, but a pixel limit, they will get cut off in search results, but that is okay. Google will still read the whole title tag. You want to make sure that what's at the beginning is going to help searchers actually click on you, but Google will read the whole title tag and assess that when it comes to determining who should actually rank. And then next question is, how do you navigate building backlinks without buying backlinks in a way that Google disapproves of? Will, do you want to speak to that? How do you navigate building backlinks without buying backlinks in a way that Google disapproves of? Uh-oh, I think Will might have frozen. All right, I will take that one then. So a lot of, many times, websites where you're paying for a profile, if they were around in the times when Google really started, pulling the hammer down when it came to buying links, those links may be no followed. We have always believed that no follow links do still have value. We believe that essentially, we believe that Google actually does follow those. And so it is not a concern to us for most of the websites. Even if they do have a no follow, we still want those links. Oftentimes the links are actually followed, and we don't believe that there is any negative penalty, if you will, to having links on sites where you're paying to be present and there's a direct link back to your website. Now, if it is a quality website, so like niche.com is obviously well regarded in the institution, I would not go out and buy from like, you know, kind of like lower end, low quality. So if it's a quality website and it's directly through and you're paying to have a profile there, there's no concern.
Any other questions, Paula?
Yeah, actually we have, I think we have maybe like 3 or 4 more. So we'll see how many of these we can roll through. So far, they look like SEO questions. So what other tools do you use for keywords? I do wish Will was still on. I'm assuming he had a technical difficulty, but he'll get back so that he can answer this specifically, because we've actually been changing up the keyword tools that we use recently, because there's always new good stuff coming out, and Will is back. So I'm going to turn that to you, Will. We do have a lot of questions to get through. So, but which other tools do you use for keywords?
I managed to kill GoToWebinar somehow, but some of my favorite keyword tool right this second is actually Google Search Console, because it shows you what are the things that Google already sees you as relevant for. Right behind that, one that we're getting a lot of utility from is a newer tool called Surfer SEO. And what's interesting about Surfer SEO is that if you give it a root keyword, it'll start to build out a topic cluster for you. And what we've come to understand is that it's no longer about having a single page that encompasses all of the concepts around a given keyword. It's now about building clusters of authority through the development of multiple pages or content resources, videos, audio, imagery that support the overall topical authority.
All right, let's see. Another question is about the truncated title tags. So from the user side, have you noticed any impact on CTR with truncated title tags? We haven't specifically studied that, but we have not. I would say for most of our clients, the title tags will be truncated because of the fact that there's usually a lot that we need to say. By the time you put in, you know, the topic of the page written, you know, in an explanatory but trying to be direct way, and the business name, it tends to be truncated.
There was a lot of discussion about title tags.
Oh, we lost your audio, Will. Oh, there you go.
Goodness sake.
You're good now. It went out and came back.
Okay, so sorry. So title tags, Google started rewriting them for us, right? And a lot of people in the SEO industry were complaining mightily about Google rewriting their title tags. But I think the right way to approach that is to see it as a gift. And that is that if Google is rewriting your title tag, they're probably showing you exactly how they want to see it. So if you find that in doing searches for yourself, your title tags are getting rewritten by Google, consider whether or not you couldn't use what they're suggesting, not only for your title tag, but for the content on your page, right? Because if you want to have agreement between your title tag and say the first heading on your page, there's no better cue from Google as to what they expect than the way that they're actually rewriting your stuff.
Good point. Next question is the presentation we've seen the same as the report we can download? The presentation and the report are 2 different documents. So the link to download the full research report is in the chat. We will include it in the follow-up email, and we'll also include a link to the slide deck from today in the follow-up email, as well as the recording. And
as Bruce indicated, the report itself is, it's over 70 pages of data and commentary. So there's a lot of meat in there. I think it's instructive. Now, I mean, based on the questions that we're seeing in the chat, feels to me like we got a pretty savvy group here. So I think a big benefit of having the actual research document is to go tell the story to your stakeholders, because when they see things like the disconnect, and we were really a little bit surprised by that kind of, we think we're doing this, but this is what we're actually finding. That was a really interesting disconnect. Is there any questions that we haven't answered?
There's a question actually in the question area. It says, any advice how to shift the narrative that SEO is free or should be very low cost and doesn't need as much investment?
So I think that there's a really great way to do that, and that is, and this is, I've been doing this with a couple of clients and prospects just in the last month or two. We get them to give us access to their Google AdWords, and so we were able to see in AdWords what things are people searching for that are actively converting, right? i.e., I become an applicant, I start the application process, I buy stuff, right? And so we then take that data and we look at how they rank organically. And so if I see a whole bunch of words that they're buying that are driving converting traffic, and I see them ranking nowhere for those, that to me is a really strong indication of the ROI of SEO. And obviously, if I'm not ranking for it today, but I'm paying for it, then that tells me that that there's benefit to being present organically. And the way I like to look at it, one of the tools we use actually just launched this really cool forecasting thing. So we take that AdWords data, we put it in, we see where they're ranking, and we say, if we were in the top 10, how much more traffic would we be seeing? Or if we know conversion rates and dollar values, we're able to say, I was looking at one in a different industry, and we saw like $48 million of new revenue by them just ranking organically for things that they're paying dollars to AdWords for.
Let's see, we have a couple more questions in there. This most recent one from Brian, I definitely want to answer this one. Are internal links counted as backlinks? So they're not counted as backlinks in terms of like sending Google juice or authority from other sites to you, but internal links are so important, especially within university websites. So you're essentially, it's value in a similar way. You're just pointing your own value over to those pages. So every page on your site is linked to equally from the navigation if it's in the navigation, but you have to have links from other pages to the most important pages that you want to rank in order for Google to see those pages as ones that should rank.
Based on a study that I just got access to, the magic number is 10. So any page that you want ranking for something needs 10 internal links pointing to it. And in the best case, you're not going to use the exact same anchor text from each of those pages that you're linking in. If we run out of time here in the chat, please feel free to email these questions to us. I'm sure there'll be contact information somewhere, but I was looking at this list of questions and I was like, this is a great blog post that needs to be written. So thank you all for contributing to this presentation. Oh yeah, just seeing this advice on structuring complete revision of websites. I think it's okay. So the question is program by program or another way. Again, another conversation that I had just super recently. I worry about the way we look at the programs, right? Because when we look at programs by portfolio, that's not necessarily going to be the content organization that Google thinks makes sense. So to the extent that you can map keywords and rational content clusters to your kind of portfolio of programs, great. But I do think that makes a lot of sense to look from a top level down, and then to the extent that you know that your students are national, international, local, regional, what can you do to reinforce those signals as well? Because if I'm a college in Southern California, for instance, I know that most of my student body comes from the surrounding area. For me to try to rank nationally for everything probably doesn't make sense. But it's going to be a lot easier for me to rank for Southern California and the surrounds. So, number one, what is the most rational top level organization organizationally? And then number two, how does that map to what you're able to define about keyword clusters? And then number three, where does localization fall into that?
All righty, we are right at 1 o'clock. Great questions. We actually did hit on all of them. But yeah, we'll definitely write a blog post about our answers to these questions and share that out. And we will be following up with all of the resources that I promised. So thank y'all so much for attending today and for your attention during the webinar. And we hope to see y'all soon.
And thanks, Bruce and Jim, for your hard work on this research product.